I was born in a small mountain village in Laos, where the clouds rested on the peaks and mornings smelled like wood smoke and steaming rice, where roosters cried before the sun rose and mist clung to the gardens like a thin white blanket. We were poor in money, but rich in land, animals, and family, and our house, built from wood and bamboo with a hard dirt floor, held more love than I understood at the time. At the center of our home was a fire that never fully went out, and beside it my mother cooked. My grandmother told stories, and my siblings and I fell asleep to the sound of crackling embers and distant insects. Before the war, my life followed the rhythm of the seasons. Planting rice in muddy fields, weeding corn under the hot sun, gathering firewood, carrying water from the stream in metal buckets that bruised my hips, and sitting in the evenings learning embroidery from my grandmother, who said every stitch carried memory and every pattern told a story of where we came from. I believed I would grow up, marry, have children in that same village, and be buried near my ancestors on the hillside. And in the middle of that quiet life was Vang, the boy from the house near the stream. The one who used to chase frogs with me when we were small and later walked past me pretending not to see me, though I could feel his eyes like sunlight on my skin. During New Year, the village transformed into a sea of color and music. Girls in pleated skirts heavy with silver coins, boys pretending confidence they did not feel, elders smiling as they watched us play the ball toss game that was never just a game. When Vang stood in front of me and tossed me a cloth ball for the first time, my hands trembled so badly I almost dropped it. And every time our fingers brushed, my heart beat so loud I was sure he could hear it. Soon after, his family came to drink tea with mine, and though no formal promises were spoken, when he tied a white string around my wrist during a small blessing and wished for my spirit to stay safe, I felt my future quietly tie itself to his. Then the war crept closer like a shadow stretching longer each day. At first, it was only whispers from travelers, then distant explosions that shook the ground, then planes roaring overhead like metal thunder. We learned to freeze when we heard engines and to tell the difference between real thunder and bombs. Smoke sometimes rose from valleys that had been green the day before, and strangers began passing through our village with haunted eyes and stories of soldiers, shootings, and families running into the forest. One morning before sunrise, Vang asked me to meet him by the stream. Mist hovered over the water, and even the birds were quiet. He said he had to leave to help defend our people, that he could not stay while others fought. I felt fear claw through me, but I also felt pride and love, and I knew I could not ask him to stay. I tore a red thread from my sleeve and tied it around his wrist, telling him to come back to me. He pressed his forehead to mine and promised that if he were alive, he would find me again. I watched him walk into the trees with the other young men until the forest swallowed them, and that was the last day I felt like a child. After that, fear lived with us. We dug hiding places in the forest and kept small sacks of rice buried there. At night, my parents whispered about escape routes. Then, one afternoon, shouting broke through the village like a storm. Soldiers were coming. Panic spread instantly. We grabbed what we could carry: rice, blankets, a cooking pot, my grandmother's silver necklace, my baby brother tied tightly to my mother's back. Animals ran loose. Dogs barked wildly. Children cried. My grandfather stood in the doorway staring at the mountains with tears in his eyes, saying our ancestors were buried here. But gunfire cracked in the distance, sharp and real. And even he turned away. We fled into the jungle in a long, desperate line, branches tearing our clothes, thorns cutting our skin. We walked all night and hid during the day under thick trees while planes circled above. Hunger came quickly. We ate rice grain by grain until it was gone, then chewed leaves and roots. Mosquitoes swarmed us. An old woman died quietly in her sleep, and we buried her in a shallow grave without ceremony because we could not stay. On the fourth day, we reached a clearing we had to cross, and my father watched the trees for a long time before motioning us forward. We had barely stepped into the open when gunfire exploded around us. Leaves shredded overhead, dirt burst near our feet, people screamed. My father shouted for us to get down, but there was nowhere to hide. My grandfather was beside me one moment and falling the next, a bullet tearing through him. My mother cried out, but my father dragged her arm. Then pain like fire slammed into my leg, and I fell hard, the world spinning, my ears ringing. I told them I could not stand. My mother tried to lift me, but she was carrying my brother and shaking with terror. Bullets snapped through branches, bark exploded from trees. My father looked at me with a face I will never forget, a face breaking under a choice no parent should have to make. He said they had to go, or we would all die. They dragged me into thick bushes. My mother pressed her forehead to mine, sobbing, promising they would come back. My little sister screamed my name as my father carried her away, her hand reaching for me until the forest swallowed them. Then I was alone. The gunfire faded, replaced by insects and distant birds. Blood soaked into the soil beneath me. Flies gathered. I thought of Vang and wondered if he had died somewhere like this, alone under the trees. I drifted in and out of darkness until voices reached me. Two men from another fleeing group argued over whether to carry me. One said I would slow them down and they might all die. The other said I was still breathing and could not be left. They made a stretcher from branches and carried me through the jungle, every step sending pain through my body. But I stayed alive. Weeks later, we reached the Mekong River, wide and fast and brown, separating war from uncertainty. We crossed at night in a small, overcrowded boat. Water splashed in. A baby whimpered. A woman prayed softly. I looked back at the dark outline of the mountains disappearing behind us and felt my childhood vanish with them. The refugee camp in Thailand was rows of bamboo huts, food lines, sickness, and quiet crying at night. My leg healed crooked, and I walked with a limp that never left. Years passed before our names were called to go to America. America was bright, loud, and lonely. I worked in a factory sewing clothes under buzzing lights, my hands moving while my mind wandered back to mountains and mist. Then one winter at a New Year celebration in a school gym, I saw a man across the room whose smile stopped my breath. A scar crossed his eyebrow, and he looked older and thinner. But when he said my name softly, I knew. I dropped the plate in my hands. It shattered on the floor. We walked toward each other slowly, afraid to blink, then held each other and cried for all the years stolen by war. He had searched for me, believing I might still be alive. We married the next year in a small ceremony filled with traditional clothes, food, and blessings. Elders tying white strings around our wrists to bind our souls together. Now we are old. The war still lives in my dreams, but every morning I wake to the smell of coffee and hear my husband humming in the kitchen. Our grandchildren run through the house laughing, safe in a way we never were. I tell them we lost our home, our land, and many people we loved. But we did not lose everything, because love survived the bombs, the jungle, the river, and the ocean. And somehow, against all odds, it found its way back to me,